You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Before, I think we have to treat each horses differently, depending on, they all have different personalities and how they go. I think really I try to come in on each one very level-headed and stay really, I think almost more simple is better. And I mean, the main thing for me is I always, want my horse going forward. I think having a forward horse is really important. And then, second, I think would be really just having that adjustability. I think adjustability really makes everything in eventing, because we have to, run fast cross country and then come back and then the same in show jumping, and then having that in dressage. And so I just really try to work on that and really just be, not overdo things. I think I want to pay attention to each horse, but not, try and go crazy and use a different methods. Just stick to my own methods and learn from what I've done with my dad for the past many years and stick to that.
Welcome to the Practical Horseman podcast, featuring conversations with respected riders, industry leaders, and horse care experts. Our goal is to inform, educate, and inspire riders of all levels. I'm Practical Horseman editor Alana Harrison. This episode, sponsored by Tribute and Farnham, is with up-and-coming eventer Olivia Dutton. Rising eventing protege Olivia Dutton, daughter of the legendary eventer Philip Dutton, is carrying forward one of the sport's most respected family legacies. The 24-year-old has blossomed from a wide-eyed, horse-crazy girl into a promising young star in the sport. Most recently, Olivia and Irish sport horse gelding Juliet claimed an individual bronze at the inaugural FEI Eventing World Championship U25 at Mill Street International in Cork County, Ireland, where they also finished as the highest placed U.S. combination. This new FEI championship was created to help bridge the gap between young rider and senior level competition, and saw 40 riders under the age of 25 from 14 different nations compete at the CCI 4-star short level. After dressage, Olivia and Julian sat in 26th place, but made a stellar comeback over cross country and show jumping to secure the first ever individual medal for the U.S. at the inaugural championship. Growing up riding on the family's True Prospect farm in West Grove, Pennsylvania, under the tutelage of her dad, a 7-time Olympian and 2-time Olympic gold medalist, Olivia was immersed in the Duttons' professional eventing operation from the time she could walk. Long before recognizing her own competition ambitions, she tagged along with her parents to some of the biggest events around the world, where she had the opportunity to watch her dad compete at the highest level of the sport. While her parents encouraged Olivia to pursue show jumping, she caught the eventing bug by the age of 10, when she began competing with one of her first mounts, the Dude. She later took over Santa's Playboy, an off-the-track thoroughbred who had previously competed at the advanced level with his owner, Amy Ruth Borun. In 2016, Olivia and Santa's Playboy were reserve champion in the CCI 2-star at the Hagyard Midsouth 3-day event and team challenge. In 2018, she helped Area 2 capture team gold at the Adequan FEI North American Youth Rider Championships, riding Mr. Medicott, and went on to compete at increasingly demanding levels, moving up to intermediate at Carolina International, and later stepping into CCI 4-star competition. Olivia briefly stepped away from full-time competition to attend the University of Kentucky, where she studied business while continuing to ride and compete on the weekends, a balancing act that became a hallmark of her early 20s. In 2022, she partnered with off-the-track Thoroughbred Sea of Clouds after taking over the ride from her dad, who had produced the gelding to the 5-star level and finished in 10th place at the 2022 Land Rover Kentucky 3-day event CCI 5-star long. Olivia and Socks, as he's known around the barn, finished in 13th at the 2024 Cosequin Lexington CCI 4-star short and were 8th in the Mars Bromont CCI 4-star long that same year. Together, the pair has continued to climb up the international ranks, contesting multiple CCI 4-star events, including Bromont International and Bocolo, before capturing a standout CCI 4-star short victory at the Morven Park Fall International Horse Trials in 2025. In today's podcast, we talked to Olivia fresh off her bronze finish at the first ever U25 championships. She tells us about her partnership with Julian, what it was like having her famous father as a coach growing up, and how they continue to navigate the parent-coach dynamics, and why she rides for herself as well as for her family's legacy. Before we dive into the conversation, here's a message from our sponsor, Tribute. At Tribute Equine Nutrition, caring for horses has always come first. As a family-owned company safely making feed right here in the USA, they're celebrating America's 250th anniversary by supporting programs that make a difference through horses. Every bag of Tribute sold helps support Path International's Equine Services for Heroes programs, helping veterans through equine-assisted services. They've also introduced limited edition patriotic horse treats for summer. Ready to try Tribute? Start with a free personalized feeding plan and your first bag free at tributeequinenutrition.com. That's tributeequinenutrition.com. Hi, Olivia. Welcome to the Practical Horseman podcast. We are so excited to have you today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Huge congratulations. You and Julian claimed an individual bronze at the FEI Eventing U25 World Championship during the Mill Street International Horse Trials in Ireland, literally just a few days ago. Can you tell us about that experience and kind of what it meant to you?
Yeah, it was so amazing. It was, their inaugural event. It was the first time they were doing it. So I think we were all, testing it out for the first time. But, we had a great team that win, and we all became really close friends. But yeah, the Mill Street event is amazing. It's so beautiful. It's very horse friendly, and it was amazing. And to end up so well was just, it was a dream come true. I really didn't imagine it that way. So couldn't be more happy.
Yeah, and where in Ireland is it again?
It's near like Killarney, which is what it's called. But it's really a beautiful area, and they have a really cute town. And they did a parade when we like on Wednesday, and so we got to walk through the town and like fly our flags and so it was just a great experience.
Oh my gosh, how much fun.
Mm-hmm.
And Olivia, can you tell us a little bit about your strategy with him going into the event?
Yeah, I think I wanted to be as competitive as possible. That was all our goals. We really wanted to, prove that us US riders can be competitive against the other countries. And so, with him, I, was hoping for a better dressage test. It didn't really come out that way, but that happens. And I was lucky enough that the cross country and show jumping proved to be pretty hard. So we were able to, move up and work our way to the top that way. But yeah, the cross country course was big and bold and tough. And, they had some pretty severe angles for the corners. And so Julian, my horse, is a great cross country horse, so I was able to, cruise around that course and be as quick as I can. And then he jumped a nice clear show jumping on the last day.
Yeah, well, you guys, certainly made an amazing comeback after not your best dressage score, for sure. Mm-hmm. And we understand, Olivia, you took over the ride with him in September 2025 after your dad, Philip Dutton, campaigned him throughout 24 and 25. Can you talk a little bit about your partnership with him and how it's kind of developed over the past year?
Yeah, so my dad did pretty well with him. And I had ridden him a few times, just at home when, my dad was gone or something. And I always got along with him. And so it kind of, we thought that we would be a good fit together. My dad thought it would be a good idea. And so we talked to the owners, and luckily they were very supportive and really, made it possible for me to get the ride on him, which I'm so thankful for, because, I started competing him, like you said, I think end of August, September. And then we just started, moving up the levels pretty quickly and just clicked instantly. And so then we did our first long format was the 3-star long last fall at Maryland, and we came third there. And so then we moved up to the 4-star level this year and have had good success. And, he's a very kind, sweet horse. And he's, I think, a little bit more of a girl's ride. So I think that's why we get along so well. So, yeah, ever since I started riding him, I've just loved it.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, didn't your dad ride him in Kentucky in the last couple years? Or maybe last year?
Yeah, he did the 4-star on him. I think it might have been 2 years ago. Yeah. And it's that famous moment of him almost falling off of him that that happened at Kentucky, and my dad hung on, and Julian just stood there still while he climbed back on. So that kind of describes Julian. He's just a good boy, and he's, as soon as you take off the accelerator, he'll just stop and stand.
Oh my gosh, now that you say that, Olivia, I think that was my first year covering Kentucky, and I happened to be right there at that.
Yeah. It was a very famous moment.
Yeah, it was. And can you tell us a little bit more, like, what is he like to ride and train?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's actually quite a big horse and very long. So he's got a lot of movement and he's got a really nice trot, but it's kind of putting it all together. And I'm quite a small girl. So, he's a big horse for me, but he's actually, sensitive in his own way. And so I think a lot of it is how to, ride him as best as I can. And because he can get a little bit nervous in the arena. So staying calm as well. But he's amazing cross country. He's very honest and brave, and he doesn't pull at all, which I love. He's very much, you kick and he goes, and then you sit back, and then he'll come back to me. So he's very adjustable, which is really important, and especially to me because I'm not the strongest rider, compared to my dad. And so, yeah, in that way, he's great, and he's just the best way to describe him is he's a trier. He doesn't have, I would say, the most talent like some horses do, but he makes up for it in his willingness, and he always wants to please. And I definitely feel that going cross country, he wants to do well as much as I do.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit about what his personality is like behind the scenes, kind of in the barn?
Yeah, he's a goofball. Loves people, and he's very, he's pretty easygoing, but he definitely gets attached to his friends. He always loves having friends around, and he can get a little upset when, if he's by himself. He hates being by himself. But for the most part, he's just a sweetheart, and he just loves being around people and getting bribed by treats, and we treat him like the king he is. So
Yeah, I love it. And does he go by Julian, or does he have another barn name?
yeah, so his barn name is Julian, but I call him Juju a lot. It suits him a bit more. So yeah, I call him Juju.
Love it. I love it. And I know you guys are literally just back from Ireland, but do you have any idea what's next for you guys?
Yeah, we're actually still, trying to figure that out and what will be best for him. He's going to have a little bit of a time off after this. The travel can be really hard on them. It's a big trip, and but he came out of the event very well. But I think just having some time off will be good for him. It's still up in the air. I think maybe the Morven 4-star, or yeah, I'm not sure. We're figuring out what will be best.
Yeah. Plan in the process for sure.
Exactly.
And then Olivia, you also have a very special partnership with off the track thoroughbred Sea of Clouds, who you've been competing with since 2022. And we understand that Socks has actually been in the Dutton program since he was a 3-year-old. Would you mind also just telling us about your partnership with him and what he's like to ride and train?
Yeah, so yes, like you said, Socks we've had for a very long time, and he's a part of our family. And he was my first advanced level horse, so that's always special to me. And I've had a great run on him. He's done so much for me, and taken me around many Kentuckys and many 4-stars. And so this year I took him to Kentucky, and he did well. And then we kind of decided for him just to step down a bit and have life a bit easier. He's getting older, so now he has a younger rider riding him and just having some fun and going around some little novices. And so he's just stepping down, but he's very much still part of our family. And I just we were thinking a bit of an easier life for him now is best.
Yeah, absolutely. And how old is he now?
So I think he's only 15, which, is not too old when you compare it, to other horses, but he has done a lot in his career. Like we said, we got him as a 3-year-old, and I think he did his first 5-star at 10 years old. So, he's done a lot for his age.
Yeah. And I know it's always about doing what's best for them as individuals, for sure.
Exactly.
And yeah, I know your dad rode Socks to the 5-star level, and I finished in 10th place in 2022 at Kentucky. Can you talk about any advice he gave you before you took Socks over?
Yeah, I mean, he gives me a lot of advice. I think the one hard thing is that we're different riders. My dad is an amazing cross country rider, and I couldn't even imagine, doing what he does sometimes, because he's just so strong, and he can really guide especially a greener horse around a cross country. And so I think I had to, take his advice and learn from him, but also find my own way. And I think having Socks, I really learned that, because I had to learn what best worked for me. And so, Socks was such a safe horse, and I knew that he was always going to figure things out. And he had that experience. So I was very lucky to have a horse like him to learn from and go around those tracks and get that experience.
Yeah, yeah. And have you found, Olivia, that the thoroughbreds tend to excel in eventing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big supporter of the thoroughbreds. I think they have all that heart and willingness to do so. I think, unfortunately, now with the dressage getting a bit more competitive in the show jumping, we're not seeing them as much. But I mean, like we saw at Mill Street in the under 25s, it definitely wasn't a dressage show, and it was more of a cross country and jumping show. So I think thoroughbreds still definitely have their place in the sport, and I'll always be a big supporter of them and love to have them in the barn.
And then, Olivia, shifting gears a bit, in a previous article we published about you and your dad, you had told us you were 10 when you realized how big of a deal he was in eventing. Can you talk about what it was like having your dad as a coach growing up and how you guys kind of navigated and balanced that coach-parent relationship?
Yeah, I think it's always a balance, but we've done pretty well at it. I think when I was younger, I definitely um, you know, once I started going to the shows with him and saw him at Kentucky, I thought he was so cool, and so I really tried to soak up everything I learned from him. And we had so many also amazing riders at the barn. As a little kid, I just looked up to everyone. But we try to manage it really well. And as I'm getting older and getting some independence, doing my own thing a little bit, but I still rely on him so much, and really love to have him at every single show with me, supporting me and giving me advice. And he now, knows exactly what to say to me in the right moments, and how to make me excel at the shows, especially, and especially going cross country when I'm a bit nervous. He'll boost me up and get me excited, or if he needs to calm me down before dressage or something, he's great at doing that.
Yeah, we have some great photos from our photographer of him coaching you, even when you were little. So, and your dad is a big believer that adversity is key to building character in this sport, and that to succeed, you really do need a strong backbone. Can you talk about anything you kind of learned from that philosophy?
Yeah, I think he's so true in that, because this sport, there's just so many ups and downs, and it's never, one day, like now you're top of the moon, and then another day you're just wondering what's happening, and why are all your horses not feeling good, and so it's just so up and down. And so I think trying to be very level in it, especially when working with the horses. I think you need to not have too much emotion when you get on one. Like if you had a bad ride, then when you get on the next one, I think you need to really push that aside. But I think everyone's gonna unfortunately have some falls, and everyone's not gonna have the best day. So, you just have to learn from it, and you get a strong head from it. And honestly, consistency is key. So just keep at it. And then if you do, it's gonna happen at some point.
And in that same article I mentioned earlier, you also talked about how your dad taught you to be a smart, conscientious horsewoman who always prioritizes her horse's health and happiness. Can you speak a little bit more to that about like kind of the horse care routine and stuff you learned from your dad?
Yeah, I think that is the horse care is so important. We wouldn't be anything without the horses. And, I really consider them part of my family. So I really try to, focus on how they're feeling, and, what would be best for them. And my dad is, yeah, he's an incredible horseman, and really treating each horse as an individual. And all the horses we have different programs, and especially leading up to events, it's not all the same. So really, finding out and really just knowing your horses as best as you can, and really getting into every detail, and yeah, I just, the more time I spend with the horses is better.
Yeah, for sure. And we know, of course, you had your dad, but were there any other notable coaches or mentors that you worked with when you were growing up?
So obviously my dad is the main one. I'd say one coach who really I looked up to was Richard Pickin, who he sadly has passed away. But he really was also an incredible horseman, and really, he was my show jump coach. But he had advice for everything. And so I trained with him in the show jumping and actually based at his farm with Joni Morris when I was in college. And so I just learned a lot from him and how he trained horses and he was very big on the details. And so I'd say he was a very influential figure in my life. And then, I'd say Lauren Huff is also another show jump trainer of mine, and she's always been a role model for me. So, I mean, it goes on and on, but I'd say those are
Yeah.
the main ones.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And then, of course, your dad's a famous eventer. But what was it about eventing for you that really drew you to the sport, opposed to some of the other disciplines?
Yeah, I mean, believe it or not, my parents actually wanted me to get into show jumping, but I decided to stick with eventing. Um, what I love is the community that we have in eventing. I think the people are just amazing, and we're all very supportive of each other. And I just think it's amazing. Like, say at Mill Street, you can have not so good of a dressage test and then still come in third place. So it's really, you can work your way. And just because you have one person has a lot of money and can buy a really nice horse doesn't mean that they're going to win. It's a lot more than that, and you need to have a connection and a partnership with your horse. And so I think eventing really brings out that. And you need to work hard to do well in this sport, and it's definitely not given to you.
Yeah, for sure. You kind of alluded to this earlier, but in eventing, especially all equestrian sports, but eventing especially, things don't always go as planned, and you really just have to learn how to deal with those moments. Can you speak to any personal disappointments in your career and how you learned to kind of persevere through those?
Yeah, there's been a lot. Definitely had my ups and downs, but I'd say one main thing was my first time going overseas. I think it was 2 years ago. I went to Buccalo for the 4-star long on Sea of Clouds. And I remember I was very nervous and freezing cold, and I was feeling sick that day. And I didn't ride well to, I think it was the last water jump on course, and socks stopped and I just like popped up, and I was so embarrassed. And I was just like, because I went over feeling pretty confident and everything had gone well until then, and so I just felt so defeated. And I remember coming home, and just the support that I was given was amazing, because I didn't want to see anyone. I was so embarrassed. But um, I think everyone knows in this sport that this happens. Like, you can't take one bad result and just think that you're not good. It happens to everyone, and so you just have to keep on going and really just put it, like, learn from it, but put it behind you.
And Olivia, you mentioned that you do sometimes get competition nerves. Can you talk about how you deal with those in the moment?
Yeah, I think it's always a work in progress. It's never easy, especially at the big events. But I think the main thing I always try to think about is that to get to, say, if you're at a certain big competition, to get there, you did all the work that you needed to do to get there, and you're very deserving to be there. And so you really just have to trust it, and trust that you know your horse, and have the confidence to then go in and just stick with your plan, and not, say if someone else is doing something different, don't change it because watch them do it. I think really stick to your routine and not treat it like anything different. And that's really helped me stay very neutral with my emotions. I think it's good to be nervous. You want to be nervous, but keeping them in check is important as well.
Yeah, for sure. And can you speak kind of about your overall training philosophy when it comes to your eventing horses?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, I think we have to treat each horses differently, depending on, they all have different personalities and how they go. I think really I try to come in on each one very level headed and, stay really, I think almost more simple is better. Um, and I mean, the main thing for me is I always, want my horse going forward. I think having a forward horse is really important. And then, second, I think would be really just having that adjustability. I think adjustability really makes everything in eventing because we have to, run fast cross country and then come back and then the same in show jumping and then having that in dressage. And so I just really try to work on that and really just be, not overdo things. I think I want to pay attention to each horse, but not, try and go crazy and use a different methods. Just stick to my own methods and learn from what I've done with my dad for the past year, like many years, and stick to that.
And now a quick break to recognize this podcast's second sponsor, Farnam. This episode is brought to you by Farnam, celebrating 80 years of trusted equine care, and Endure Gold Killer Fly and Mosquito Control, a new fly spray for horses. When your horse needs to stay focused, it helps to take flies out of the equation. Endure Gold uses brand new EPA-approved ingredients never before seen in equine care to annihilate flies, ticks, and mosquitoes. This advanced formula delivers fast knockdown and up to 14 days of fly protection you can trust. Discover fly protection with Endure Gold from Farnam at farnam.com. That's FARNAM.com. Yeah. And do you have any favorite training exercises that kind of help with the adjustability factor?
Yeah, I mean, one thing, this is very simple and you don't need anything, but one thing I've been doing recently with the younger horses is instead of flatting in a dressage arena all the time, I'll take my horses out in the cross country field and do my flat work out there. And I find that's been really good for them, not just, mentally, but just to change things up. And it also will help your jumping as well, because then you're working on, making the horse go forward and then coming back and then the suppleness. And so I think that kind of helps you in each phase and taking them, because a lot of time your horse will be good in a dressage arena, but then if you take it out and like the spooky cross country jumps and stuff. And so changing things up, I think is good.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And like you said, it's probably really good for their brains too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, every horse is an individual, and I'm sure you cater their routines based on that. But could you kind of generally speak to like what your horse's fitness routines looks like going into like a big event like Kentucky?
Yeah, I mean, each one is different. I'd say definitely more in the beginning of the year. We have more of an intense, fitness program. I'd say now at this point of the season, it's more just maintaining their fitness. But before Kentucky, where we have been in the winter is Wellington, Florida. So we don't have hills in Wellington. So there we do a lot of long trot sets, and then we'll do slow canners, like longer slow canners. But then as soon as we get home to Pennsylvania, we'll start using the hills and then do some shorter sprints. And then we'll do, longer stamina gallops as well. And so we're very lucky where we are in Pennsylvania with using the terrain.
And then, Olivia, are there any other horses that you're currently working with that you're excited about and wanted to share?
Yeah, I'm lucky to have a few young horses. I have a 7-year-old named Dresden, and he actually just did his first 2-star long at Bromont, where he came second in the under 25 class. And he's much different to Julian. He's like 15.3, I think. He's tiny, but he thinks he's a very big horse, and he's very competitive, and he's got a big head on his shoulders. And so he's been very fun to train, and I've had him since he was 5, and so I've brought him up the levels, and that's been really rewarding because the young horses, it's never easy, and you have some good days and bad days, but so I'm excited about him. And then I have just a bunch of young ones. I think that's always a work in progress, having more horses and finding the owners that are willing to support you to do it. So, it's work in progress in building a string.
Yeah, for sure. And what would you say, Olivia, you love most about competing with your horses?
Well, there's a lot of things. I think I really enjoy seeing them progress and feeling how, I love comparing, say, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, because I think, in the beginning of the year, a lot of the times they're feeling really green and fresh, and then seeing how they can progress throughout the year. I always find that very rewarding. I think also just I love the thrill that it brings, even at the day to day at home, and just really trying to learn from everyone. I think everyone has their own ways they do things. And so just finding your way that works for you is always, there's so much to learn in our sport. I think there's just, you never stop, which is the best part about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's always, always something to learn. And especially for such a young age, Olivia, what would you attribute most to your success as a rider?
I'd say the one thing would be consistency. I, just have kept chipping away at it. I think the worst thing you can do is do too much. I think a lot of the times as a young rider, you just want to keep moving up the levels. And I definitely wanted to do that, as well. But I think just take your time and get really good at each level. And then once you feel that you're ready to do the next level, do that. But it takes longer if you move up and then you have a bad go and then you have to move down, and then you and the horse's confidence are both lost. So I'd say, slow and steady wins the race, and consistency.
And what's the hardest part of this sport for you?
I'd say, unfortunately, one part of our sport is that it's just so financially expensive. And, no matter how good of a rider you are, you need the horse to do it. And so it's just getting more and more expensive, and the horses are getting more expensive. So I'd say that's just one hard part about it is from if don't have a lot of support to do so, that would be just building the owners and finding the people that are willing to support you can be hard. But I've been really lucky to have some really great owners that are supporting me all the way, and but I'd say just learning that aspect of it has been difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels like, it's not just eventing, it's kind of like across the board. It's just everything. Yeah, for an equestrian sports. And on a happier note, what's your favorite part of the sport?
I mean, obviously, I think I would much rather spend all my days with horses rather than be in an office job personally. I think it's pretty amazing that I get to just wake up early and be at the barn and be with these amazing animals. I really try not to take that for granted because I just think we're so lucky to do this. And yes, it's very hard work, but that part is pretty unbelievable. Like I have my sister lives in New York City, and she gets jealous that, I do get to be outside all day and not be in an office. So I think that part is great. And I'd also say just the community that we have, and I've just made such great friends through the sport, and having people to bounce ideas off of and just get to relate to.
And outside of riding, I know you're obviously very, very young, but the sport takes so much physical strength. Is there anything you do outside of riding to stay in shape? Or are you mostly in the saddle all day, every day?
No, I have. Really have started working with a trainer named Tony Sandoval, and he is great. And I had a bad injury last summer where I broke my pelvis and my hips, and so after that, I really, I was doing a lot of physical therapy, and so I started working with him because I wanted to, help get back to where I was, but also be stronger. And so since then, I've been really focusing on that and working with him, and I've noticed such a big difference, because obviously time in the saddle is the most important. But I think if we can be as strong as we can, especially in our core, for our horses, it makes a major difference. Especially, like, say, I haven't done one yet, but going around a 5-star for 11 minutes, you need to be strong.
Yeah, no, for sure. Olivia, what did your recovery from that injury look like?
Yeah, it was, for the first few weeks, I was just pretty bedridden, and healing the bones. And then I was lucky enough to have a really good physical therapist, and she was actually a rider herself. And so she knew, um, what I wanted to get back to. And so I was pretty hard on myself with making sure I did all my physical therapy, because I didn't want to be, you know, stiff and sore the rest of my life. And so, yeah, I just kept at it, and I got exercises at home, and then did in-person therapy, and was able to get back to it pretty quickly.
That's amazing. And is it something, Olivia, that you'll kind of like continue to have to work on keeping it, strong, or is it something that like once it's healed, it's good to go?
I pretty much feel back to normal. I'd say I had on my left side was where the injury was worse, and so that side is weaker, so that's taken a while to build back. But when I'm on a horse now, I don't notice it. I'm feeling back to how I was.
That's incredible. And Olivia, what would you say the best training advice you've ever received, or what advice would you give your younger self?
I think what comes to my head would be what I mentioned a bit, is just slow and steady wins the race. I think in our sport, you can't overdo things. You need to have the basics, get the basics really good, and then you can move on from there.
And in your opinion, what makes a good horse person?
Um, I think one that always thinks of the horse first and foremost. I think these animals try so hard for us, and so we always need to try and think of how they're thinking in their head. I think that really makes the best horse person, and doing as much as they can to learn and just figure out what's best for your horse.
Excellent. And then last but not least, we had just a couple fun questions. When you're not riding, where can we find you? And or is there just anything people might not know about you that you could share?
Well, I'll do a fun fact. What people might not know about me was when I was younger, I played field hockey, ice hockey, and lacrosse. So I was, haven't just ridden my whole life. I did try other sports. But then for the most part, I'm at the barn most days, but I do try to be a normal person sometimes. My sister lives in New York City, so I'll go visit her and try to be normal for a few days. And I think that's important as well for your mental state. It's good to take away from the horses sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. It's like as much as you love it, but like when it's your full-time job all the time, for sure.
Yeah. I know some people like on vacation will be like, "Oh, do you want to ride horses hacking or something?" And I'll be like, "No, I don't actually."
Right. Let the legs rest, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then Olivia, do you have any competition superstitions?
I'm actually not very superstitious. No, I don't. I'm simple.
No way. And then mares or geldings?
I'm going to go with geldings, but a good mare is a good mare.
Excellent. Well, Olivia, I know we covered a ton of topics. Is there anything I just didn't think to ask you that you wanted to add, or do you feel like we've pretty much covered everything?
No, I think that was perfect.
Excellent. Well, huge congrats on your recent win with Julian again, and thank you so much for being with us today, Olivia.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Practical Horseman podcast. And a big thank you to this episode's sponsors, Tribute and Farnham. You can subscribe to the Practical Horseman podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. While you're there, please rate and review the show. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Alana Harrison, and you've been listening to the Practical Horseman podcast.